Sound good? Give me a thumbs up, Nicole. Can you hear us good? Awesome. Awesome. So we're going to get started then. I'm going to, first of all, welcome everybody to to Zoom Live, a little social distancing. It looks like we're closer than we actually are. This is
very
long way away. And
we've all used hand sanitizer.
yeah, so we're going to have a really good time. I've got a lot of material to cover with you guys. I'm getting some updated text from my broker here as we speak, so I want to make sure we have all the latest, greatest data to share with you. I've asked, these are unprecedented times. We've never been in something quite like this before, and so I thought, what better thing to do than to bring on live to the top teams, not just in Springfield, but in all of Keller Williams and all the region. Combined, they do almost 900 units last year, phenomenal production, and they're just good people. And so they actually, both of them are like, yes, we want to do whatever we can to help. And so thank you guys for taking time out of your day. I know you're super busy on national calls, local calls, leading your team. And so we're just going to spend the next hour. I've got a lot of questions that people have reached out. If you'll notice your chat box down there, you can be willing to put any chats you want there. I can read them here as we're going. So I'm going to be toggling back and forth between the computer screen, reading your chats, and look at the questions I have. And so as we transition to a completely new norm, when you think about the housing crisis of 08, it kind of took some months to unfold, right?
We were trying to prepare for it.
Yeah, it was a slow thing. This has not been like that. It's been like, in weeks, everything is just transformed overnight. So, Keller Williams has stepped up to the plate and done a ton of national calling. The last 2 weeks has been just slam full, and this week's full again. And we're super grateful for that. But I wanted, in our conversations yesterday, I just want to continue that conversation because I thought it was so cool. I got a chance to mastermind with them a little bit, so I'm going to share some of those things with you all because it's pretty unique and some ideas. And so I'm going to tee up some topics, and you guys just take it from there. Okay, so the first topic that I think is so important, and it's the first topic of every book that Gary Keller writes about. Obviously, that's the guy we follow a lot. So, and you should, if you're in whatever brand you're with, you should absolutely listen to what he does because he's a visionary in this industry. He starts every one of these books with mindset, and so I wanted to know kind of what are you doing, because I feel like anxiety is high right now. It's high. It's almost palatable when I talk to customers, when I talk to agents. The unknown scares us. So what are you two doing each day to make sure you're keeping the proper perspective?
Well, anxiety gets really high, and you will find whatever you want to hear and listen to it.
Exactly.
Right? So if you're not in a good place, you're going to jump on social media and find out other people that aren't in a good place, and you're going to engage. Right? Whether that's the national news or somebody else complaining about their economy, right? And you're going to jump on that. I'm sure you had calls about, well, the National Guard's going to shut everything down, right? I don't know where that came from.
And it's a spiral. What happens is when you let your emotions lead,
That's
right?
correct.
Something like anxiety or fear, those things are healthy in check. Fear is healthy in check. However, when you allow it to spiral and you feed it, so that's what you're talking about with social media or national news. If you have anxiety or you're worried about things and you're feeding it with other people that are creating more anxiety, it becomes a spiral that is very, very hard to control once left unchecked.
It's vicious. Mm-hmm. It's actually vicious, and it will eat you alive.
Mm-hmm. It will, and I think we talked yesterday, and I know Adam you're more prepared for this than the rest of us, maybe because you have been working from home for quite some time. For me, though, I'm still getting up at the same time. My alarm clock goes off at the same time it always did. I still run ahead of getting in the shower. I still have my kids get up and they eat their breakfast at the same time, and they fix their hair and they brush their teeth, and then they start school. And I jump on the phones. So I'm making sure that my routine hasn't, I've protected my routine maybe as much as I can protect it.
Sure. And I think that's probably one piece of advice if I was listening that I would take away, is making sure you're still living that exact same clock. Mm-hmm. Obviously, your day's going to look a lot different, mm-hmm. right? But you should be more productive because you're not driving anywhere you normally would drive, right? If you're homeschooling your kids, and that's a huge distraction, I know because it's happening at my house, it's a huge distraction. But if you time block it, right, and add it to your calendar, then your day becomes as productive as it was.
Well, and I think there's some people that have this thought of, well, I'm home and I want to spend time with my kids.
Yeah.
That's perfectly appropriate.
Absolutely.
The thing is, though, is you don't have to also feel guilty about working or doing your lead generation activities. So for us, my kids, I can set them up with what they're supposed to do, and then I can do what I need to do. And if we need to come back and forth and they need to ask me a question on homework, that's okay. But I'm not sitting there watching them over their shoulder do their homework. They're learning to be self-motivated and accountable to themselves. That's a good lesson for kids to learn.
And they're gonna learn by watching.
That's exactly right. And they see that I'm still showing up and they see that I'm still eating well. And we talked a little bit yesterday about, in the MREA, they talk about this energy model and a lot of people ignore it. That's not the fancy fun part of
Well, if I can be vulnerable with you, I ignore it.
Sure, I think we all did. But I've had some coaching around, what are you doing around mindset? And so for us, we look at, well, what do we want to do every day? And I know, Adam, you still have your routine, you're still working out every day. You're sending you just showed me the picture that you send your coach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's protecting that energy and protecting our activity levels and what we're eating and what we're putting into our brains and our minds and all those types of things. And you're like, okay, well, if I can protect that energy, the anxiety then is a little bit more okay.
It's about like getting up, taking a shower, putting on clothes when you're going to work, even though you're not going to work, right? So that you feel like you're at work when you're at work.
That's right.
You know, and many people don't have a home office, but you have got to go find a dedicated space in your house.
Yeah.
So that when you're in it, you're working, and when you're working, you're in it. You know, and you're not doing that from another spot. You know, whether that's the kitchen table or the corner of the guest bedroom, like you have got to go set up a spot and know that when you're going in there, you're working, and that your family knows when you're going there, you're working, and that time is protected.
That's right, you're getting your team, which now is your family, to buy into what your systems are. And the other important thing is when you go in there, then you're going to work. What also happens is then when you're done with work, you can leave it. Yes. So I see what it could go two ways, where some people are kind of not working that much and they're just fitting things in here and there. And then some people now don't have an off button because they're at work, because their home is at their work. So if you have that separate space, it's then easier at your normal end time, whether that's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, people have different end times. You can turn that light off, turn that computer off, and move back into your family space.
Yeah, I worked from home for 8 years prior to this. So I travel for a week and I'd be home for a week. I travel for a week, but I had a chair that was in the sitting area. And the only time I sit in that chair was when I worked. And I'd get up in the morning, I'd go sit there. The other thing I did is I broke it up. I thought that was really, I wanted to speak to that, because if you just sit down and you get in front of a computer and you grind it out every day, all day, pretty soon you're gonna hate that computer. And you're not gonna wanna go there. It's gonna be punishment because you're not interacting with people. So it's beautiful weather right now. What I would do is I'd work for like an hour and a half, make calls, do emails, grind it out, and then I have my to-do list, and then I have breaks scheduled in. I go outside and I walk around for 15 minutes. And I do me stuff. I do fun stuff.
Well, if we get the pause button, talk about that for a minute. It's having a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And not flying by the seat of your pants. It's knowing what your plan's going to be every day. And if you know it's going to be 8 degrees on Wednesday, work that into your plan.
Absolutely.
With your kids.
Yeah.
Right? And follow that schedule.
Because if it's gonna be 80 on Wednesday and raining on Saturday, and you need to make up some dials from Wednesday, you can pre-plan that so that you have the ability to enjoy this extra time with your kids without feeling guilty about it.
But you gotta have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think those time blocks, they're always important, and probably more important now. And for us, I'm not doing an hour and a half, we're maybe doing 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Where it's 50 minutes of solid, intense work, and then 10 minutes of we're gonna go shoot baskets, or gonna be my kids in sprints down the road.
So you said this at the beginning, I want to come back to it because I think it's so important. There's a lot of media out there, and people are getting sucked into social media specifically, and they're listening to doctors, and that I've heard, consistently from here to here on the spectrum. This is going to be over quickly, no hardly, and then it's the world's going to end, right? What are you listening to, and what are you not listening to? What are the two pieces there that you guys are making sure you watch?
So I'm not listening to social media, anything that's on social media.
Very,
very, very limited. Because anybody can put anything on there.
Right.
And so, you've got to have a filter on that. And even if you're listening to it, right, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt and see what's happening in your local area. You got to be responsible locally, right? When they talk about the economy, right? I want to know about my economy, right?
Yeah.
And this is a very hyper local business, and so continuing to educate yourself on what's going on in the market and knowing what's going on with your personal finances, with your office finances, and not listening to here's what the Dow is doing, right?
Yeah.
Here's what the market as a whole is doing, because those numbers will be dragged down. We learned that in the last recession. Miami, San Diego, Phoenix, right? That make up the most units will drag those numbers in different directions, and you got to pay attention to what's happening locally. But if you do start to get into a bad place, you can easily hit the reset button by jumping on a podcast, right? And tricking your mind back into where it needs to be. Think like the CEO is awesome. I think I've made it through it like 4 times now. The One Thing podcast is really awesome. It's got like 300 episodes. John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, right? Just jump on and listen for 30 minutes, and it kind of gets you right.
And I think it's when you're looking at people that are talking, there are people that talk the loudest, right? And they have the fancy lights and the fancy cameras, and they look really great on social media. And put into perspective, if there's someone that I want to know maybe what they're scripting around or what they're seeing in their market, I'm looking at somebody that's doing more units than we're doing.
Right.
So I'm going to look at what Adam's team's going to do. I'm going to call Adam, or I'm going to call Carrie and say, hey, what are you guys seeing? Where are you at with these things? I'm also then going to look on a national level to see maybe what's coming a little bit. If I wanted to look at maybe a Jeff Glover or the Logan Group, I know that we're not them, and they're going to feel it first. So those are the people I'm looking at. I'm not looking at somebody that their primary responsibility or their primary job is somehow on social media just to talk. We all, I think, know what we need to do, which is extra activities and cutting expenses. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And I think you have a lot of people that want to give their opinion on this shift book. And I think you just be very careful that you're following someone that's number one, maybe been through one before, and number two, that's still succeeding at a high level, and they're still showing up every day. Those are the people that I'm interested in.
But if you're listening right now, look for somebody else who's doing a business similar to what you're doing, or someone that has something that you want, right? And calling and engaging with them, because a lot of the names that you're dropping are Kelring's names, and if you're not Kelring's, you don't know who those are. But find somebody else in the marketplace and start talking to them. Mastermind with them. Hey, what are you experiencing? How are you handling this? And getting advice from somebody else who's boots on the ground right here in your local market.
And what are best practices? Because common practice isn't always best practice. So in these changing times, what are best practices?
All right.
I want to speak to the fundamentals of the economy, because I've heard a lot of people, and I get a lot of people send me articles because they know we care about that stuff. And the one thing I want everybody to understand is that these people that are saying we're going to hit 35% unemployment and we're going to go to a worse recession than the Great Depression, they're sensationalists. The fundamentals of the economy were so good prior to this. The Fed has reacted in unprecedented ways. The federal government moved faster than I've ever seen the federal government do to write the biggest stimulus, even when you adjust for inflation, the biggest stimulus bill we've ever seen. So unprecedented times, unprecedented response, and you have to remember the fundamentals of the economy were good. So do I think it's going to bounce back in 2 months and take off again? Probably not. But do I think a year from now we're going to be headed in a very good direction? I absolutely do. And let's specifically on real estate. This is this industry we're in. We need to understand the fundamentals of housing starts and inventory. We are not 2008. And for those of you who keep going back there, it's very different. Very different times. The banks are in a good position, and we don't have a lot of inventory. So the two big things that caused the 08 crash from an economic standpoint are not there. So there's still people that have to buy homes.
And we're still in a housing shortage.
Yes, that's what I want people to understand. So does that mean that the next 6 months are going to be a little light? Probably. Does that mean it's going to come back strong and be very good? Yes. So if you want to be in this industry, stay in it, because it's going to be good.
And they don't have to be light.
Exactly.
They don't have to be light. I mean, we can still do the same number of transactions we've been doing. We just have to put in the extra work.
That's correct. And that's what I've been talking to my team about is it's gonna show up way differently,
Mhm.
but I'm confident we're gonna look back at the end of the year on the previous 12 months, and we're gonna still hit the numbers we expected to hit. They're just showing up in a different way. You know, buyers did not decide to buy a house a month ago.
Exactly.
Or 2 months ago. They decided 6 months ago, a year ago. So they might not buy in April, but they will buy by June, right? And the unit will just show up in a different way. We are so blessed because of the industry that we're in, that we're not in the restaurant industry, we're not in the hotel industry. Like, we can't get those nights and weekends back, right? We can still get ours. It's just gonna show up in a different way, and we have to be prepared to do more work than we've ever done to get it to show up.
Well, and I think, MAPS had me, which again is a PW term, it's a coaching program, but they asked me to do basically reimagining the buyer consult. And we have been fortunate enough that we have done a lot of consults online. The message that I wanted to get out though was, guys, when we talk about scripting and overcoming objections and those types of things, that doesn't mean we're trying to trick people into buying a house. That's not what it is. I'm trying to meet them where they are. So if the objection is their money that they were going to put down that was in the stock market, okay, I cannot recover that for them. However, I can listen, I can help get them on a plan so that they can then come up with another down payment. And all it means is they're on my pipeline report. It doesn't matter to me if they buy this month or 6 months from now or 6 years from now. I'm going to be in the business long enough to offer them value. If the objection is that they have safety concerns, well, let's isolate what that objection is and can I overcome it? And by overcome them, I don't mean trick them, I mean make them feel safe.
I'm gonna tell you what the workaround looks like.
How do I help you? I'm gonna meet you where you are, and I wanna make sure that I make you as comfortable as I can in the buying process. That hasn't changed. That's basic real estate. It's just looks a little different.
It looks a lot different.
Yeah.
But, you know, if their concern is a safety issue, we're talking to them about virtual showings, right? Or virtual consultations. You know, doing everything through Zoom now. We are so blessed to have FaceTime, Duo, you know, all of these tools now that we have in our tool belt that we would not have had a decade ago. And we can continue to work forward. But we just have to explain that to the customer, right? When we talk about what are you listening to, we control that narrative as realtors. We control that to our customers. And so we just have to tell them, yes, business is still moving forward, because it is, knowing our stats and telling them how we're doing business in a different way.
That's exactly right. And it may mean that you're talking to more people to get to the same result that you wanted to get. But the benefit of that is look at what your pipeline report's going to look like in 6 months. If you're right, so if you're increasing the number of contacts, there are still people that have to buy and sell. Let's find them, let's help them as they need the help. And at the same time, these other people that we come in contact with, how are we a resource for them? How do we be, you know, Gary always talks about he's offended by Angie's List, right? Let's be their resource. We've got the ability to do that, and let's meet them where they are.
This is a time to build mind share and get really close with your sphere and your database. If you don't have a database right now, you know, I remember when Gary got into business, he talks about how he sold several houses and then he went 5 months without closing. He was going home because he was broke and didn't have any money. He asked his dad for $500. And dad said, "How do I know you would work it?" And he walked out and looked at the shoebox and he went through all of his names, address, phone numbers. He said, "This is what I've been doing." And his dad said, "I'll bet $500 on that." And then boom, what happened? The rest is history, so to speak. So I'm telling you right now, if you don't have closings in May, June, July, that's okay. Get in contact with people and start building your database.
Even if you have closings in May, June.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you do.
Right now, I think so many people are looking for what to be doing. And if you aren't prepared, I'm going to tell you how to get prepared. And the next lever to pull is your lead generation lever.
Yeah, so what are you specifically doing for lead gen right now?
So right now, we're just talking to people, right? So we're not calling and asking for business.
Right.
Just calling and checking on people.
Yeah.
And it's a really simple conversation. The answer rate right now is higher than I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it is.
Which is, I mean, you've got to take advantage of that, right? And just calling and checking in. And I will tell you, this is the perfect time that, I've never done lead generation before. I've never called and checked on them. I sold them a house 2.5 years ago and I've never called them again. This is the perfect time to just say, hey, I'm just calling to check on you. Because anxiety is so high, people are so receptive to it.
Judy Jones was here a couple years ago, and I was like, hey, those people that I never call, what do you do? And Judy said, you know, you just own it and you call and you say, I'm embarrassed that I haven't called you before now, and I would be more embarrassed if I didn't call you right now.
Yes. Yes.
I want to know how you are, what you need, and what service I can be. And again, just to reiterate what Adam said, there's no ask for business right now. That's important.
It is any service, right? So we hooked up with a really large food supplier locally, and they told us, we'll get you all the toilet paper you want. You just name how much you want. And we got it in 16 packs, right? But we just had to think outside the box. So literally, when people said, gosh, we need toilet paper, right? We had someone in their car out delivering. I need toilet paper. One of my employees hasn't shown up for work, but she had to go 3 places this morning. Great, we'll drop it to your employee. We don't even know her, right? So just coming from contribution. Sarah and I spent the other night grocery shopping for a customer we just called to check on, right? She's 80, was uncomfortable getting out of her house, and she sent us a laundry list of stuff. That's what I mean. You got to come for contribution. You got to be prepared to do it. And so asking them what they want, what they need, or how's everything going, be prepared to answer that call and be that resource for them.
The other thing is be prepared that you're on the phone longer than you would then during normal agent, because these people are also stuck in their homes. So they maybe haven't talked to another adult.
They're craving that contact.
And they're craving that contact. And so being able to listen and making sure that this is that time that you train your listening skills. You're listening more than you're talking, so that you can relate it to the heart of what maybe they need. And maybe they don't need toilet paper or milk or eggs. Maybe they need human interaction, and you can either invite them to join one of your virtual groups that you set up, or you can make a note to contact them maybe the next week and check in again.
And they don't, that adage, like they don't care what you know until they know you care, and that happens, right? And now you can stick them in a database. Well, I don't have a database. Great, now's the time to start one.
Yeah.
Right? And it can be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet.
Command's free if you're kidding.
Who do I put in there, right? People that you've met, people in your sphere, people that you go to church with, people in your small group, people, your coworkers from your last job, right? You can easily come up with a database and start following it, and then just keeping track of who you're talking to and when, and then doing it regularly. But now's the time to start doing it.
And then you can add notes later when you start to have the additional conversations. What are their kids' names? What are their dogs' names? And just to kind of define the met, I'm guessing it's the same for you guys. It is a name, it's a phone number, it's a physical address, and it's an email address. It's those 4 pieces of information. That's how you're going to get, at some point when we're through this, your database to start working.
What if you're in KW and you're using command? It will tell you when you've gotten to that level, right? It wants all that stuff filled out. That's correct. Hey, why have you on the phone? I just want to make sure my database is up to date, and we have them up there, and I can see all the information, and we're just filling in the blanks.
Yeah. If you'll go out to YouTube, to our market center, I think it's Rachel Lusk, you can research her name. The YouTube channel we have, I shot a 5-minute video that shows you how to add all those things you just talked about and put people on 3 smart plans that will give you over 31 touches in a year. It's simple. It's that simple. Never been a better time to do it.
And the system does it for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's just putting it in.
Yeah.
So, you're at home, you don't have any listing appointments, you don't have any showings to go on. Your 2 listings you have sitting out there aren't getting showings right now, right? What do? And this is something easily to go and start. Again, time block every day. And we've been saying, well, we're just doubling down on activities. People are like, what do you mean doubling down, right? So if you normally make 20 contacts per day, and that's not 20 voicemails, right? That's 20 interactions. Then we're upping that to 40, right? So if you normally do 5 or you do 0, right? Put a number on that and hold yourself accountable to it every day.
The other part in that is you will start to feel productive again. So you're not going on appointments, but you're talking to people, and that brings energy into your life, and it brings energy into your home, and you get the opportunity to talk to people. And guess what productivity helps? Anxiety.
Absolutely.
You feel like you're controlling that business again, and you're like, okay, I am doing something to move the needle forward.
And ultimately, it all goes to how it's going.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, Gary says be the economist of choice. What he means is you need to be educated. And you need to be educated on what's going on in your market at any given time. And maybe you know the stats in their neighborhood before you get on the phone with them. So you can talk about that. Well, I'm glad you asked. I actually was just looking at your neighborhood. Or here's how many houses went under contract in the last 72 hours. Mike Brown's been posting that on our internal page, right? Just because it's really great dialogue, and you can go grab those stats really fast and reiterate them and look like the expert.
Absolutely. They've got this many closings in the last 7 days.
Correct.
Just as serious.
Well, and Mike, the one this morning, I think was in the last 24 hours. I mean, it was even more narrow than the one I just saw. And that's great information.
So let's talk about virtual business, because that's where a lot of business is going. How are you adjusted to virtual buyers and virtual listing appointments? I'll let you guys.
I'm really enjoying myself, actually.
You like it better?
I got that high need personality. I want to get in and get out and get it over with. And there's a lot less chit chat. There's a lot less, standing around and small talk, right? It's straight to business, and I've enjoyed that part of it. But we're doing most of ours via Zoom. It just seems to be the easiest, best platform. It's not shaky and stuff like FaceTime. We can send that Zoom link directly to the customer, right? They can click on the button, and they're right up on their computer. We're up on ours, and we can start a quick conversation.
You can also then see, it's easier to build rapport face to face. So, the other part of Zoom that you're able to utilize, if you are walking through someone through either listing paperwork or a buyer agency agreement, you can share your screen with them so that they can see what you're going through. So they have the same level of confidence in what they're signing virtually as they did when you were meeting with them in person.
So let's go specific to buyers. Are you doing all your buyer consultations now by Zoom?
Either Zoom or on the phone.
Okay.
So there are certain people that still prefer a phone conversation versus a face-to-face. So we will still do those over the phone. We'll do them or Zoom. So we are offering, again, we're going to meet them where they are. So we're going to make sure that they're comfortable with the technology that we're offering.
Okay.
And some of them like FaceTime. Some of them are comfortable with that. We are, the bonus of all of this is we're getting very good at figuring out how people like to communicate, and then we're adapting the communication style to theirs. So we're meeting the consumer with what their preference is.
The thing I like about Zoom versus a phone call is I can get that body language from you. If I'm only seeing their face, I can't even get it. So I'm asking, hey, can you adjust your screen a little bit? I can't see your face, right? I want to see their shoulders. Okay, I want to see them shrug. I want to see them.
You want to lean forward or back or.
That's correct. And you're still getting that body language from them, and you're able to share the documents right there, go over them with them, and ask them, hey, go ahead and sign right now while I'm on the phone in case you have an issue, right? That way we're not hanging up the phone and we still have to transact. Like, it's being done right there in front of us. And
it almost creates, number one, the sense of urgency for
does.
you,
That's exactly
where
right.
you're not having to do it, and it also then is the presumptive close. It's not a hard close anymore. So those of you that maybe are like, it's hard for me to get people to sign things, it's way easier because, like Adam said, that's the script. Hey, well, I've got you. Why don't you go ahead and sign in case you have any questions while we're in here? It's done.
Yeah. So you're doing it right there, sharing screen. They can just email it to them. They can pull it up. If they have something, you just swap back, show your screen, go to here.
And I am not a techie person.
Yeah.
At all.
And we know that.
I mean, it's very simple.
It is. It's super simple. So let's talk virtual open houses. You guys have done it. And showing homes. How are you showing homes? Are you just using a phone? Have you gotten the stabilizer to use? Are you hiring a third party company to come in there and do the 360s? What are you guys doing?
At this point, we are just using our phones, and I will tell you that Rachel Shepard is the one that told me if you're doing it, you need to hold it landscape. Because it's number one better quality and they can see more of it. I did my first virtual open house last weekend. Our team has been doing them for the last 3 weekends. I did my first one because you kind of have to lead by example and understand what the hiccups are. Sometimes helps with being boots on the ground. And it was just through, at this point, we're still able to just do it through our phones. I don't know if you guys have hired a third party.
We have not hired a third party.
Yeah.
We do have a stabilizer, but really it's a matter of just getting the work done.
Yeah.
Right? And especially if you're FaceTiming with your client, they can tell you, hey, go look back in that closet. Can I see that again? What are those shelves like? Yeah. Right? And they still need to visit the house in person at some point.
Right.
Right? You can use the inspection period to do that. If you need to, you need to go ahead and get the house locked up. But this is a great way to go from 8 houses down to 2 by you taking them out, right? Getting your wipes, your sanitizer, your gloves, right? You going into the house. So we're asking the other agent, hey, we're coming to do a virtual showing. Can you have the seller have all the lights on, have the closet doors open, right?
So
we don't have to touch anything.
So right here, what Adam just said there, first of all, he communicated what it was. It wasn't an actual showing, it was a virtual showing.
Correct.
So the expectation with the lister,
with the seller
was correct. And then the second thing he did was he took another step and said, do these things. So therefore, we're not touching them. I love that.
Well, and the seller feels really comfortable because they don't want us touching their stuff any more than we might be touching it.
Right.
And then we can get in, have a conversation with our customer right in front of the palm of our hand, right?
Yeah.
We're so lucky. And we can do that and go through the property, answer questions, and then we can eliminate that property and go on to the next one. And so you're only actually taking your customer out to see a house, maybe 2 houses.
That's it.
Right? You're narrowing it all down for them.
But look at the tonality of what you just said, and we're so lucky, right?
Yeah.
So this is Adam's mindset, be like Adam, right? That if you come from a place of gratitude, of we're so fortunate, number one, to be in this industry, and number two, have the technology available, and go one step further for your sellers. I mean, if you've got sellers that don't want showings, can we come in and can we video this? And that way, when people call to do a showing, we can provide them with the video, whether that's another agent or a buyer that calls in directly.
Exactly right.
So those of you that do have, 2 to 5 to 8 to 10 listings that maybe aren't getting activity right now, it's a really great touch for your seller. And you can get that video and now you have it in your library so that when someone does call, you can provide that information.
So when the co-op agent calls and says, hey,
I want to show this.
yeah, great, let me go ahead and start with the video that we did. Make sure your client likes it and pass that. Then there's that extra layer of installation there. And you look like a rock star here, co-op agent.
Yeah.
And to your seller that you called and proactively said, I don't want more people in your home than me in your home.
Yeah, I think the main thing is communication with the co-op agent and the selling agent, letting them know, and vice versa. So the communication to, hey, if I'm coming, this is what it is, this is what it looks like. It really is. I mean, I think we're going to come out of this with some big learning experiences out of this time frame of how we operate more efficiently.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the opportunity right now. I mean, the book, The Road Less Stupid, they basically say, don't let a crisis pass without taking advantage of it. This is how you hone those skills. During this time, you will be a better, stronger, faster agent when this is over.
That's correct.
Let's talk budgeting. I mean, that's a big thing. A lot of people are talking about. I've made adjustments to my personal budget, business budget. What have you guys done? Let's talk with business and then shift to personal. What have you done from the business side? You want to slash everything, or you guys kind of just try to forecast forward a certain percentage or line items, or how's it looking?
So we start line item, right? Line by line by line, because we're looking for a specific return on investment from every single dollar that we're putting out there.
Right.
In an ideal world, we're looking for 6 times, right? So if we're doing any kind of online lead purchasing, anything like that, we're looking for 6 times. At a minimum, we're looking for 4. So if it's not at least hitting that 4 times threshold, we're cutting it. This is stuff we should have been doing before, but it's forcing us to have that conversation now. So going through there and making sure that every dollar you're spending, because we've got less of them to work with now, is coming back to you at least 4 times. And if it's not, getting it off the books.
Yeah, I think it's also knowing what your baseline is. So for us, our baseline of the number of pendings and closings that we have is very different than an individual agent. But an individual agent, you still have a baseline number of closings that you have to have for your mortgage payment, for your utilities, for your groceries, etc. So what we look at is basically a thing called PACE. So you have your preliminary plan, right, which was where we were all operating 3 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, and we were executing the plan that we had developed in 3rd and 4th quarter last year. Then you have an alternate plan, and our alternate plan is right now. We made those adjustments. We looked at ROI, we made those cuts. But coming up, we also have a contingency plan, right? The C in PACE, and that is what happens if our baseline gets cut in half. What happens if our baseline is reduced to 25%? And we basically line item out where our costs are covered, and we know what transaction count, at what point we make the next cuts. So when we're in the heat of the moment, I'm not making an emotional decision or holding on too long because I'm emotionally attached to something. So you look at it, you're like, okay, at this level, this goes, at the next level, this goes, at the next level, this goes, until you get to the E, which is your emergency plan. And that's kind of the panic button of, but we're not going to panic because we're going to be prepared for it. So it's basically in the event that showing stopped, but title companies closed, and there were no closings, we have an emergency plan because you're taking the emotion out of it now before you're there, so that anxiety now has been alleviated. I know what has to happen every step of the way.
ours wasn't as fancy as that, but we did just.
That's a nice idea, yeah.
It was great.
I
So,
saw it for someone, it was short and free, and I saw them.
we just ABCD every single item.
Yeah.
Right? So, the last one being salaries on protect my people.
Yep.
Right? We will move out of the office and work out our homes permanently before we lay somebody off. Like that is in our plan. So what are we gonna get eliminated when we get down to only 40 pendings? Which when Jen's saying transaction, she's talking about a property she has under contract. Right? And we are using the same metric because that's our future income to pay all those bills. And so as that starts to decrease, we know exactly what we're slashing. And Melinda knows, hey, pull that lever now because that's where we're at. And she knows exactly what to do because there's a plan. And the thing I would take away from this is there is a written plan. And you have to make sure, regardless of the size of your business, if you're a two-person team, an individual person, you have to have a plan to know what to do when certain things happen. And now we can continue to move the ball down the field and be really proactive because we have a plan. We've already been there, done that, we've taken care of it. We had a meeting and it's written down, and now that's exactly right.
The other part of that, when you look at like the contingency part of it, because you're the same way, if you've got any type of employee or people that are counting on you, that's the last thing to go. And there are stimulus packages available for business owners. So you have the ability to protect your people in the event that you get to eat.
That's correct.
And you have to know what that looks like now, so that when you get to eat, you have a plan in place for those people, so that they eventually want to come back into your organization if and when that happens.
So in taking that one step farther, we also went to our major vendors, the places we were spending 4 figures or more a month, and we went to them and said, hey, what are you willing to do for us? Right? So if we were spending $2,500 with them a month, right, that's somebody we want to be talking to right away. There were some people that were really proactive and cut automatically. Others we had to go ask, but they all cut. We were very blessed to get our rent at Keller Williams cut in half for the month. So thank you to our OP for that. We got to make sure that we're having conversations with all those vendors, those people with recurring credit cards. This is the perfect time to get that credit card filled out and go line by line, go, what's that? Right? What are we spending $90 a month on that? Or what's that actually getting us? And it's forced us in a good way to have some really serious conversations about the vendors that we use and where our dollars go every month.
It's getting lean and getting intentional about it. And when we look at it, as far as like those vendors go, you swing a big stick, right? You're a big team, and so those of you that are out there, and I'm a big team, you're thinking, well, I don't have that mind power, and you do. You're still in the industry, you still have a voice, still make those calls. Some of you that may be calling where you personally live, for your rent or a car payment, and seeing if you can defer some of those payments. Getting on the front side of it now will help you so much more later when you get to the state of being okay, now things are really starting to slow down.
That's correct. And having those conversations now.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can do is sit on your hands, right? Having those conversations up front and saying, hey, we still plan on doing business with you, but we have to do it in a different way.
I think the thing I just took away is I draw this back to one of my favorite Maxwell quotes. People don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan.
Right.
And right now, you need to have a plan, not a doomsday plan, but just what they both talk about in a different way. Levels to your strategy and your income. So we have the unique ability in this industry to forecast 30, 60, 90 days by looking at our pipeline, what's pending, what our cash flow is going to be. Cash flow is king. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Warren Buffett's number one thing he looks at is cash flow. And right now, your cash flow in your business is your pendings that you have coming. And if you don't have the cash flow there, you're not really spending a lot. It's just a matter of, it's a fact of life, right?
And I think we're both preparing for all of this, and it's business as usual.
That's exactly right.
Or business as unusual. We are doubling down the activity so that we never have to get to the contingency or emergency.
Yeah, that's correct.
We just know, okay, I am willing to do anything to avoid that.
That's
correct. So if that means now I'm dialing, I welcome the ISA to here I am. So we're dialing, we're making those contacts, we're taking the extra steps and doing the extra activities, because I now that I've written it out, know what that pain would be like.
It was painful to write it out. Right? Because you have to decide, hey, what's our future business going to look like in order to have a future business for everybody to come back to. And it was painful to write it out, and I don't want to ever look at it again.
No, but it's there.
And that's exactly right, but I don't want to ever have to open that book.
But now know, you're still showing up every day. You're sending your coach a picture of you all dressed up. You're making your phone calls, you're making your contacts because you don't ever want to look at them again.
That's correct.
I'm willing to go there.
So we use this term doubling down. Touch on that a little bit, what you're doubling down on.
So doubling down, you know, I have been fortunate enough for the last maybe 6 months or so to really kind of only have to touch my database or my top clients. And now it doesn't look like that anymore. I am making calls. So Adam said it right. If before I was making 20 contacts a day, now I'm making 40 contacts a day. Our agents that before we were really wanting them out in the field, they don't have that ability right now. So they're replacing that time with dialing sessions, and they are getting very, very good at it. They're getting more skilled on it as we go. And it looks like we are still going to fill 5 to 6 hours of hard work every day. If that's not appointments, it's lead generation, and that's every person on the team. It also looks like doubling down looks like your admin staff buttoning up those transactions. Those things that you have that are set to close, that's your gold mine right now. You have to make sure that nothing happens to those. You're creating the moat around it.
What you guys do a bit for me, because I'm starting to talk a lot about lead generation, and we get it now. I think we've got to get crystal clear. We've got to do more, just be genuine, touch people. But we have deals under contract. Deals that are going to go under contract. I mean, people are still moving, changing jobs. Life's still happening, right? Real estate's going to happen. It happens every month, happens every week, happens every day. It's a choice whether or not we want to be in on it. We got to keep what we get on, because that's we're doubling down on lead gen to fight for it. When we get it and we're actually in on it, what does it mean to bulletproof the transaction?
So double down on communication and customer service.
Let's go back to the beginning to a mindset, right? Because the mindset we're talking about that we're having trouble, right? We got to continually fix our mindset. Be a buyer in the market right now with a property under contract, right? Talking to their parents, talking to their coworkers, right? Looking at their personal finances, right? Everything seems a little bit off, and it's not the way they expected it to be when they decided 6 months ago that they were going to buy a house. And so you've got to touch them twice as much. Like that communication has to be there, and that expectation management is key between you, your vendors, your title companies, the lender, the co-op agent, and touching on the co-op agent. No, you're going to have to do a lot of their work because they're not going to show up the way you're going to show up, and they're not going to be as prepared as you are. So in our office, our admin staff, I'm coaching them. Guys, don't get frustrated. Just know up front you're going to have to do a lot of their work for them in order to get this deal down the road.
And we've got to get the deal down the road. So that's the part of it is that if you can hit your clients on the front side with great expectations and great communication, it's less of a messy cleanup later, right? It's less of you kind of trying to talk them back in. If you stay in front of it, it's a very seamless transaction. And that's just kind of good business practice anyway.
But it forces you to do it.
You guys are talking about expectations on the front end with the customers and with yourself and with your co-op agents and with your team. It's all new expectations.
And if you're not hearing from the co-op agent and we're waiting on, say you're the listing agent and you're not hearing something from the co-op agent and they're representing the buyer and you can't get a hold of them, I'm willing to call there. If I need an answer and I can't get it, you've got to be willing to go the extra step. And the sense of urgency and the timeline is so important. You have to be on top of everything so that it's buttoned up.
Well, right now we're seeing a bottleneck in vendor services because the refinancing, right? The title companies are slammed, the lenders are slammed, underwriters are behind, their processors are about to pull their hair out, right? And so what's that expectation management look like? Maybe we're planning for a longer close. Maybe before even filling that closing data in, we're stopping what we're doing. We're calling the lender saying, hey, I'm working with Jen Davis, right? She's writing a contract on a house. How much time do you need? Instead of just plugging that in there and praying that it's going to fit in their schedule. I'm really backed up right now. I talked to an appraiser this morning that told me he's behind 4 weeks, right? Why don't you make sure you give us 6 weeks? Excellent. Then I manage the expectations of the buyer, the seller, the co-op agent, the lender has buy-in to that date, right? Instead of putting 30 days on there and then having pushback later on after the co-op agent has already taken the seller out and found a new house for them, right? Now, look how many people's lives are messing with that you fix by that one extra phone call, just to kind of set the expectation up front.
That's awesome.
It's all, life is, I always say, it's about expectations and relationships. In times like this, in order to preserve relationships, communication's gotta be over the top and expectations gotta be crystal clear.
Well, most of the time, the closing, most of the times the closings that get pushed, had you called the lender ahead of time and asked their opinion, you would have set the appropriate closing date, and that frustration or people, being in flux or nervous or whatever could have been avoided.
I want to land on this, then we're going to open it up to questions. So if you have questions, type them in the chat box there on the chat. Make sure you put them in there. We'll read them. Last thing I want to talk about is marketing, because I think a lot of people are looking at marketing as an expense. And one of the things when you read MREA, for those of you who don't know how to talk about this, I'm a Millionaire Real Estate Agent. If you're new to KW or outside KW, great book. Highly encourage you to read it. He talks about there should be a spend on marketing. So are you guys cutting marketing out all the way right now? Are you doubling down on it? What's it look like? I mean, it's all virtual now. So what are we doing? I mean, open houses, they're gone. So how are we changing the transition?
So up to this point, we haven't touched those marketing dollars,
Okay.
right? Just like Jim's case point, we're not there yet.
Right.
Right.
Not touching means you haven't cut them. You're still
We
doing
haven't
it.
touched it. And in some cases, I'm seeing we've increased those marketing dollars because we're getting a better ROI there. And so it depends currently what your business looks like. But in my opinion, you still need that coming in. And earlier when I said you're going to have to do twice as much to get the same result, right? You need more leads in order to keep your business where it's at, right? We're just trying to maintain this level. Like, this is tough to come by right now, but we just want to kind of consistently have that norm. And you're going to have to know you're going to have to get more resources than you've ever had before in order to get that, right? The market's not shifting the way we expected it to shift. And I know your business is very similar to mine. We're recounting those co-op agents that show our properties, right? And they're not doing that. They're taking time off. They're doing the things we talked about in the beginning. So we're having to go do it for them, right? Just twice as much work to get the same result. And it's the same with a fleet. So you can't turn that off. You have to double down.
That's exactly right. And as far as marketing, if you're talking about branding or those types of things, in addition to generating additional leads, you still have to have a presence in the market. People still have to know that I'm showing up to work every day, and that that we're still here, and that we're not going anywhere, and that we have confidence in the market, and we're not being frivolous with that confidence. We are taking extra precautions. We're making sure that we are as safe as we can possibly be. And at the same time, showing people that we're still here and we're still a resource and we're still helping people buy and sell homes.
Yeah, and again, I mentioned blessed, right? We live in really great times. So Adam, I don't have a marketing budget. I don't buy leads on the internet. Everything that comes from sphere of influence, friends love me, right? Well, get out and show yourself off. Get on social media, make a video, start putting that content out there for free. There's no money required.
Because you go live on Facebook, and every person that you're friends with gets notification you've gone live. You just boosted your own video without having to pay any dollars for it. And look at Command. Command has some great Facebook platforms right now that are really inexpensive. So if you have some discretionary dollars, you could place them there. The other thing is, if your database is healthy, and you've got a great database, you should be able to get 10% of business from your database. So if you
by staying in touch with them, right?
staying in touch
Don't
with
forget that.
Yeah,
By staying in touch
That's
with
right.
them.
So, but you look at like you have 1,000 people, that would be 100 units. I get that not everyone has 1,000 people, but if you have 100 people, that would be 10 units. And what would 10 units do for you right now?
Oh, it's huge. I tell people, if you want to do, it's a 12 to 2 return, what Gary said on page 147 of the MREA. That's 16%. So for every 100 people that you put in your database right now, and you put on a 31 touch with birthday, quarterly calls, and bi-weekly neighborhood nurtures, you do that one time, it's set up, it's automated. You get 200 people, there's 32 closings a year.
You also look at Jason Abrams ran through the math while he was here on just the people in your cell phone, and it was 6%. So look at the number of contacts that you have in your cell phone, and 6% of those people will transact in real estate in the next 12 months. It's up to you whether that's with you or somebody else.
So that's correct. Write that down. Right? That's exactly right. Because they will transact. Are they going to transact with you? And who's in control of that? You are.
Who called them in dire straits just to say, are you okay? Can I do anything for you?
Adam will deliver utility.
Adam will deliver.
Thanks, Jim. I
pretty cool.
So we hired a new runner today.
Yes, good job.
He's buying groceries and.
Yeah. So, I think the things I'm hearing is that we've got to be more human than ever. Technologies are great. They're great tools, but nothing ever replaces
The human contact.
the human contact. You still have to be a great co-op agent. You still have to communicate expectations. All of this is human stuff, so no technology is ever going to replace that.
That's correct.
Kind of a real technical question I'm going to ask this from the code writer. I know that they've sent out 2 of them. There's 2 more. They're optional at this point. Are you guys using those or not?
So we're presenting them to our client, letting our clients.
Same, we have used them, there were a handful of deals that were getting ready to fall apart, well, a handful, there were 2 deals getting ready to fall apart last week that we were able to use it with to extend closing and save the deal.
Actually, it's been great touches for our seller because you have inventory already. Everybody had inventory before this started a couple of weeks ago, right? And it's a great excuse to call the seller and say, hey, I just want you to be aware of what we're doing proactively, right? To make sure that you still get to your goal. And we're sending that to them and letting them look at that and deciding whether they want to incorporate it into their listing agreement or not. We haven't pushed anybody, but almost all of them have agreed that, hey, that's great.
That's good.
And it's a good touch for those people that you're like, I cannot call them one more time to tell them that we've had no showings.
Yeah, it's a fantastic touch, right? And again, you have a great call and go over and say, hey, I'm going to do my virtual open at your property, right? I'm just going to do a fast walkthrough while you guys are going to the store. I'll only be there 15 minutes and be out. Or the COVID-19 writer, you know.
Those are 2 separate touches. Right now, you're
So
going to
easy.
need additional information, so I probably wouldn't, we're looking for efficiency, and we're like, hey, let's nail everything down in the conversation. You might save them, please.
Yeah.
So that you have a reason to touch them again in the same week. This isn't, I'm not saying touch them Monday and then wait 2 more weeks and touch them again.
Touch
It's
them
a
Monday and Friday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Monday, Friday, yep.
Hey, believe me, they're talking about it, right? They're talking about that science of the yard and they've been staring at it every day for 14 days because they have been in quarantine, right?
Yeah, and they're gonna start going around it. because
Correct,
now-
and they haven't heard from you,
Yep.
right? This is a perfect time to call and touch base.
One person asked, are you adding virtual tours to the MLS?
At this time, we are not. We have created a database of those tours, so I know that we've got them for a majority of our listings. Our agents have spent time going, setting those up and taking the videos. We have not uploaded them yet, because I think right now we're still wanting them on the ring
That's correct.
and having people call and ask for them, so we're not just providing those.
And that's what we've learned, we lost that engagement. You know, we invested in Matterport and then found that we lost that engagement, right? So we will go do a Matterport for you, but we want you to call and ask for it so we can have that engagement.
Gotcha. Great catch. Great catch. Mike Brown sitting here and says, I did a video walkthrough with my last listing I can share with agents. They also pass it on to buyers if they wanted. He did it and he made sure it was under a minute because that's easier to text. So you can share. The other tool I would tell you, there's a compressor app you can get so that even if it's longer, it's free. You just compress it down and you can email it or text it that way and it goes through.
Facebook Messenger, you can send a little longer video than you can via text. The other thing, and I just love it because Mike said that, if you have a seller that doesn't want for you to come, you can leverage your seller. I've had sellers that have been like, you know what, could we just see the video for you? Heck, yeah, you can. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And by the way, hold it, landscape versus portrait, and this is what I need to see.
I love that because now they're looking at their property through a buyer's eyes. And we haven't got to touch on this yet today, but talking about condition, you know, positioning yourself in the market, it allows them to take the video and look through the buyer's eyes of their property.
Maybe I should have made that.
Yeah, maybe I should take care of that. You know, so it really forces that. So I love that idea.
Awesome. We got a couple more questions here. One of them is, hey, someone should have an accountability buddy and keeping each other, especially if you're not on a team.
Exactly right.
You know, I think team, you guys probably communicate pretty frequently. You know, from the market center standpoint, we do a happy hour, and we're love to connect with you. We have all of our groups that we have. You know, get engaged, find money, as this person says, and I think that's totally cool. Let me ask this question: new agent, new agents that are in the business right now. What's the number one piece of advice you give?
I mean, naive. You know, like, how do I say it? I mean, they're so they're so naive right now to the market. Stop listening to everything that you're hearing, right? the market's gonna be fine, and you are in such a better position than agents who got into the market 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna come in and learn a completely different skill set
And learn how to work.
and learn how to work.
And don't go door knocking. That would be my.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yes.
But I'm serious when I say that. You're in a really, really great position to come in and learn how to do the activities that got us all to be sitting in these stools in the first place. And knowing how important those are, instead of just, riding this wave, kind of riding by the seat of our pants, which a lot of businesses have done the past couple of years because it's been easy, right?
Yeah.
The 3 Ps, right? Place the sign in the yard, put it in MLS and pray.
Yeah.
Right? And that has worked really well.
And we liked it too. That was also
Right? But you can't do that anymore. You can't do that. It's a new day. And so if I was a brand new agent, the first thing that I would be doing is hooking up with another agent.
Yeah.
When I said before, go find somebody that has what you want.
Yeah.
And partner with that person.
Yeah.
And so that's somebody doing 2 dozen deals a year, about 2 closings a month. Coming as a brand new agent, those are huge, right?
Yeah.
What are they doing? And because you want to get to that next step, and holding that person and yourself accountable, you can hold each other accountable, right? You guys don't have to have the same size business to hold each other accountable, right? So on our team, we always do a power call at 8 a.m. in the morning. Everybody walks in, and we use Uber conference line, again, free. But that's a great place to meet up. Hey, call me at 8 a.m. and you both are dialing in at the same time, and maybe you're script practicing. Maybe you're talking about your day, discussing the market, talking about how many contacts you're going to be making today, and holding each other accountable to that.
Yeah, and maybe even as simple as a picture of, hey, I got ready today. I'm dressed. I'm at my office. I logged in. Here we go.
That's exactly right. We got time for just a couple more questions. So type them in there if you got them.
Here's my accountability photo I took this morning. Right?
There it is.
I have somebody holding me accountable to getting up and getting dressed and acting like I normally do.
Yeah, absolutely. We do our huddles by Zoom. That way we can see everybody.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So we're doing Zoom right now in the mornings, and it is interesting. When we used to do it, we would do it. We've always done it. Well, we've always done it in the office, and so we would Zoom. But most people that weren't there just dialed in. Well, now that we're all at home, everyone is video conferencing in, and I can make sure that they all showered and ready to go.
I want to thank you both for taking the time to be here. This has been huge. I mean, for all of the folks, this is obviously the biggest audience we've had online. This is only our second or third week of doing a virtual team meeting, so it's been very different from us. But you guys, I know, you come from contribution. You share all the time, and your hearts are so good. So we've got agents, non-KW on here. I want to thank you guys for coming and showing up. We're a community here. We're not competitors. We're community. Worthy Rivals is a book Simon said he talks about. Anthony Gaines, if you haven't read, that's really good. I don't want anybody else to lose. I just want to win a little bit more, is what I always say, And so we love you all. Keep your mindset focused in the right direction, and ultimately know you control your own destiny. What you do now in the next 30, 60, 90 days is going to set you up in a major way.
And I know Adam and I both, if anybody had any questions or any details, either one of us or somebody on our team would be more than happy to answer any other questions.
I would encourage you to email them.
Yes.
That's what I would do right now. They're on the phones, LinkedIn, or whatever. So just shoot them an email or shoot somebody on their team an email. That's what I'd encourage you to do. You can reach out to me, and I can combine those and send them to you guys, and we can maybe do a follow-up in a couple of weeks. Because this business, there's some things we wanted to talk about. And both of you, I love it, transparent. You go, Travis, we're 2 weeks into this. We don't know that process yet. So I think the one thing is we're just going to continue as a family to be transparent, share best practices. We're all in this together. And I just want to thank you guys so much. Have a great day, gang. We'll talk to you later.
Bye, guys.